Hey, howdy do out there everyone, my name is Michael and welcome to the Duke Corner where I do the doodles for practice and fun. In my desperate race to try and finish showing off all of last year's work before next year, here is the next in my long list of things. This is the last of the projects from that environment class. We were broken into groups to create concept art for a story of myth. I really lucked out with this one because I got myself Tir na Nug, which is apparently the fancy Celtic name for the land of eternal youth, sometimes called the Otherworld, sometimes conflated with Eden or Limbo, sometimes known as an island to the west only reached by the dead, sometimes a subterranean invisible kingdom, or in modern fantasy's conceptualization, it's the Feywild. But regardless of how it comes across, it's always a shining ethereal place representing all of Ireland's greatest natural beauties. And I am so very much into Irish lore, so I was very pumped to get right into work on this one. It honestly turned out to be less of a group project and more like each of us chose a different part of the myth and then just went our separate ways and drew that thing. So one of us drew a landscape, the other drew a castle, and I chose a different tale that I found that was adopted, I think, off of Arthurian legend about the Isle of Apples, which tied into an older Celtic tale about a king who was given a silver bough of golden apples as a passport to enter the Otherworld, where he met Manannán mac Lir, one of the gods of Celtic myth, and Guard of the Isle, which acted as an entrance to Tir na Nug. And in many of these stories I could find, which, mind you, were very jumbled and probably inaccurate, it seems like the Otherworld was impenetrable by those without a passport to go there, or unless they were dead. So I combined all of those ideas into one scene. Based on the cliffs of Moher in Ireland, I made an impassable ridge upon which the hill fort of Manannán mac Lir can be seen through the silver boughs of the apple trees. Initially, this went really well. I came up with a sketch, started color blocking in some textures with this sort of watercolor painting kind of thing I was trying, and it was actually kind of looking nice, surprisingly, until I started getting to the tree and then it all went downhill. I was struggling with the exactness of drawing a tree, and I suppose just the anatomical structure of a tree. Something about it when I drew it as a sketch looked okay, and then the moment I tried line arting it, just blech. But this was also about the time that I got my Wolfwalkers book, so I put a lot of time into studying the Wolfwalkers art from the book to see how they did what they did, and you know what? What is this? What is it? You can't tell me. You can't tell me what this is. And what's this? I mean, I really look at it, but I zoom out, and it looks phenomenal. I think Wolfwalkers is a master of implied detail. Sketchy lines, messy overlaid watercolors, just little loose splotches that turn into mushrooms when you view from a distance. The whole movie is animated just like that. I started caring a lot less about the line art and a lot more about just the look. I wanted the motion and the feeling, so I got messier and looser and started implying more detail than drawing it explicitly. And again, that looks good for now, especially on the tree just without the leaves, but as soon as I start to progress, I lose control of that and it sort of becomes more and more muddled. The real issue I kept having over and over again, and honestly, I could have just cut that part out and it would have been fine, was the silver tree. And looking back, I actually like it more as it was in the first draft than how it ended. Me and the teacher both kept fiddling with the file. Neither of us could settle on liking the tree. We both agreed that the tree needed to be there. It was an important framing element, and without it, I'd have to change the angle of the scene and basically just redo it, because, I mean, well, that would have been fine, really, but that just wasn't where our headspace was at the time. He kept saying, make the scene wider, bring the tree in more. Make the scene wider, bring the tree in more. And each time I did that, it had the same result and the same issue over and over and over again, that it just felt out of place and incredibly unbalanced, until one of those times, I put 2 more branches on the other side to frame with it. And that did pretty well to balance it, but now the tree was sort of an overbearing figure. Framing elements in lighter colors in a scene, I think well, they can be difficult. Sometimes because they're lighter, I think they draw too much attention, and they also have this tendency, I think, to have a lot more detail on them, because with a darker shape, you can sort of fade the detail away into really, really dark shapes, things that are in shadows or silhouetted. You can't really do that with something that's shining or in light as much, or at least maybe not as easily. Certainly, I'm not skilled enough to do it. So, as in the story, I tried to paint the trees silver, but the detail and messiness really did get away from me. With one tree, it was okay. My failings there were sort of masked and compensated for by the terrain on the right side with the hill fort, which was a lot simpler and kind of more clinical in a way. But the more messy tree I added, the worse it got. It's all sort of a washout of silver and shiny, muddled textures, and not as much actual detail shines through. I think part of the issue too is that the trees were so close to the camera. I suppose I sort of missed the part where things in the foreground should probably have more real detail instead of implied detail. Implied is great when it's farther away or blurry, but framing elements in the foreground probably should have more detail because they're so close to you. So basically the entire right and left side of the canvas are just white with kind of weird spludges of blue and yellow. All in all, the mess didn't come out too bad, it just didn't come out too good either. It's in just about the worst spot that any piece can be. Mid. It's not bad enough to make fun of, not awful enough to make a story out of, or learn too much from, and it's also not good enough to be proud of, or to really have much to say about what I did well or learned. I had grand aspirations for it, but now having done it, I wouldn't do it again. I would probably cut it back and do something much simpler. I seem to have this tendency of setting my dreams way too high. I mean, I can't even draw a tree right. Where did I get the notion that I was going to draw it silver? Artists struggle with metal all the time. It's a silver tree. That just was never going to work out right. Either way, I at least really enjoyed learning about Celtic lore, and the project isn't a whole bust, it's just not very high quality work. But my digital drawings usually aren't. I'm much better at vector stuff, and apparently also charcoal. At least for now. Either way, I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, don't forget about all that likes and subscribble stuff. Thanks for making it to the end with me, and if you did, you're awesome. Have a great day, and without further ado, farewell.